that I may look into. I want them young men and them to know is the oil in the coil.
Welcome back inside the Now Morning Show. Of course, we continue the conversation on what the development of the Dragon gas field means for us here in Trinidad and Tobago and what opportunities can be gained from it. This morning, we put that inside your spotlight on Now.
And this morning, we're continuing our conversation as it relates to the license to develop the Dragon gas field in Venezuela. And of course, what sort of opportunities that can have for us in TNT. And so joining me this morning to delve a bit deeper into that issue, of course, is President and CEO of the Energy Chamber of TNT, Mr. Dax Driver. Mr. Driver, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you this morning?
I'm good, thank you.
Now, I know we're continuing the conversation, but just provide some context in terms of, you know, what was that sort of agreement or sort of consensus that we reached with the U.S. government and TNT?
Well, essentially what it is, it's a waiver which the U.S. government has granted to the government of Trinidad and Tobago to allow them to enter into negotiations with PDVSA, the state oil company of Venezuela,
right.
And the Venezuelan government to discuss, you know, how to develop gas resources in Venezuela for export to Trinidad.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, really what's happened is the US has placed Venezuela or entities within Venezuela under sanction, and you know, has said that they will take action against people who do business with them. So obviously Trinidad and Tobago government, you know, has complied with that, you know, over the last few years. But now, you know, this opportunity that they've granted a waiver, so the US is saying, no, it's okay. You know, we won't sanction Trinidad for having those discussions with PDVSA. Yeah. So essentially, what that does is it allows us to advance this project, which was a long way along the development phase prior to the sanctions coming in, and allows us to go back and advance that project for the Dragon field.
Right.
So it's not really a license to develop the field; it's a waiver allowing us to discuss the field development.
A waiver allowing us to discuss the possibility of extracting that natural gas.
Yeah. So it allows you to get into those, you know, into the negotiations to begin to do the work. I think it's important to realize that, you know, the sanctions, how they work is it's not everything in Venezuela which is sanctioned.
Yes.
There's certain activities, you know, with Venezuela which are sanctioned. So there are people who have been exporting, you know, are compliant with the sanctions regime, who have been exporting methanol from Venezuela, you know, over the last few years to the US. Yeah. There's no real restrictions on exporting natural gas. There's restrictions on doing business with PDVSA.
Yeah.
So that's really what we're in. The government of Trinidad is now allowed to do.
To enter into that negotiation phase.
Yeah.
And then all that would kind of establish the limitations and restrictions of what that means as well. Because I don't think we know exactly the full details of what the waiver means. Yes, we can go in and we can extract the gas, but what else is there to come with the lifting of that waiver?
Sure. No, I mean, but there will be things which can be done in Venezuela,
right,
which will be compliant with the sanctions regime. We're just going to make sure that anybody we're doing business with is compliant with the sanctions regime.
Right. Okay. And so, what sort of benefits you can see from this waiver to TNT? Let's look at short term and long term.
Okay. So the short-term benefit is it allows us to advance the project. Then, the medium term, what that means is that we will be able to import natural gas, yes, from Venezuela. The first place which that's been worked on is the Dragon field, which is just a very, very short distance away from an existing operating field in Trinidad, operated by Shell, the Hibiscus field. Mm-hmm. You know, the concept is to put a pipeline between that field, the Dragon field, which has had a lot of infrastructure already put in place, quite a long time ago, so it was drilled, and so there will need to be work done on that field. But the idea is then to be able to be exported from Venezuela to the Hibiscus platform in Trinidad waters, which is already linked into the natural gas network of Trinidad. So that's the immediate sort of opportunity. Yeah. Why is that important? Trinidad has been suffering really for over a decade now from a shortfall in our gas production. That means we have facilities downstream, so people who can process natural gas, so the LNG facility in Point Fortin, petrochemical plants in Point Lisas, who have spare capacity to process more natural gas to then export either LNG from Atlantic, in Point Fulton, or methanol or ammonia or some of the downstream derivatives of ammonia from Point Lisas. So if we can increase the availability of natural gas going to those existing facilities, which we have, that means we can increase our exports. Which is obviously a good thing for all of us. It means there's more foreign exchange coming into the country,
and it's also going to boost our energy sector as well.
Boosts the entire sector. It creates more jobs. Because people have lost jobs because of the of the cutbacks. It creates more opportunities for the service industry around all of those facilities.
Right.
So and it creates more government revenue, because there's obviously the more production you have going through those facilities, the more profitable they are, and the more profitable they are, the more tax the government can tax
take, and we can get some revenue from that. Now, I know that the discussion focuses on the Dragon field, but are there any other fields in Venezuela that might be of particular interest to us?
So I think this is important to put this into the bigger context. So there's the immediate sort of project, but Venezuela has 200 trillion cubic feet of gas resources which could potentially be developed. So it really dwarfs Trinidad, of the resources which we have available in country still. There's just significant, huge volumes of natural gas in Venezuela. So why can't those be developed? By Venezuela into Venezuela? People, that's the sort of obvious question people might ask. Well, the reality is there's no real market for natural gas in Venezuela. We have a big existing market in Trinidad, so there's a lot of demand for natural gas in Trinidad to go into LNG, to go into the petrochemicals. Right. And so this offers this opportunity for Venezuela to develop all of these resources. So the Dragon field, which is off the north coast of Venezuela, links into the north coast of Trinidad, is the immediate opportunity. There's other fields in that same trend. Right. You then have off the southeast coast of Trinidad, so where existing Columbus Basin, all our main Trinidad gas fields are off the southeast of Trinidad, sort of southeast from Mayaro down in that area. Right. There's huge gas fields in the Venezuelan waters down that way. There's a big field called the Loran Manatee field, which people may have heard about. Yes. So Trinidad is developing the Trinidad side of it, the Manatee side of it, but the Loran side of it is on the Venezuela side of the border. Yes. That's a huge field, and so there's significant resources there which could be developed, brought into the Trinidad system, but also there are a lot of massive resources there.
But Mr. Driver, I have a question. So you just mentioned all this natural gas is just sitting there in Venezuela. Yep. Why are they giving it away? Why are they giving it to us? I mean, what's in it for them?
Well, they won't be giving it to us. They'll be selling. Yes. There'll be ways of selling
and
that.
The reason I asked that question is because I was hearing that people are saying that they may not get financial compensation from it, but they may get another type of compensation. So that's what I'm wondering. What's in it for them?
Yeah. So it's a very good question. But there's different ways of complying with the sanctions regime, and still be able to export. So at the moment you're seeing other international oil companies exporting crude oil from Venezuela, complying with the sanctions regime. So I mean, there's various things. I mean, these are all stuff which I don't know the details of how this will all work, but you can supply products into Venezuela, and then you can pay the supplier of the product outside Venezuela for that product going in. Okay. So you could provide. So there's a big demand for LPG cooking gas in Venezuela. So you could supply that from Trinidad, and you could pay the suppliers
almost
of
like
that
a barter, like a barter. Right.
Secondly, there's a lot of people globally who are owed money by the government of Venezuela, and you can possibly, it's one of the reasons, you can pay off some of those people with the money which is owed. That's been happening with all of the oil companies. They are owed money by PDVSA, and they've been allowed to export crude oil to repay the debts which they are owed by PDVSA from the proceeds. So there's various different things you can do, to get around that. But I mean, really, what's in it for Venezuela? There's no other way for them to develop these gas fields, because of the situation in the country, there's no market for natural gas. And it's difficult to conceive of international investors investing in Venezuela to create that demand for natural gas, like we have done successfully in Trinidad. If Venezuela had those plans to do that, but it has not managed to do that, and it's unlikely to be able to do that in the short term.
Yeah, I mean, but of course, Mr. Driver, the conversation is about renewable energy, right? And we know that the hydrocarbons and petrochemicals, they are non-renewable, right? So when we extract them, the amount we extract is gone.
Right.
Why should we be excited about this sort of agreement, knowing that in a few years we may have to look at the fact that we're going to have to include renewable energy in the conversation, and we're going to have to go that way, especially as it relates to things like preserving the planet and companies being more greener and that sort of thing.
Sure. So I mean, the first point to make is that natural gas is the cleanest out of the fossil fuels. And you have coal, which has the highest carbon intensity, then oil products, and natural gas has the lowest carbon intensity. So if you're looking to have lower carbon intensity, natural gas meets that, and natural gas is going to play a big role, I think, in providing energy to the world because of the fact it is the lowest carbon intensity. The other point is that there are actually things that you can do to reduce the carbon intensity. One of the really nice ideas with Venezuela is at the moment they have a lot of natural gas which they're flaring. That means they're just burning the natural gas on the oil fields because the gas gets produced along with the oil. So as it happened in Trinidad in the past, there's nothing to do with that natural gas, and you burn. I'm talking Trinidad back in the 50s and 60s, okay? But we then developed the industries to use the natural gas. In Venezuela now, they are flaring more natural gas than we have a shortfall of demand in Trinidad, which they're just burning. It's just being burned, okay? So that's obviously from a climate change point of view terrible because you're just taking this resource, you're burning it, and creating CO2. So if you could bring that into the network, bring that to Trinidad, put it into use, it's a win-win from a climate point of view. Right. The final point is that then there's things which we can do with the natural gas as it comes to Trinidad to decarbonize it. So if you put natural gas into petrochemicals, just as a for example, if it goes into ammonia, at the moment that does create a lot of CO2, but actually you can take that CO2 you produce with the ammonia production, and you can put it into underground storage, geological formations, old oil fields. This is what they call carbon capture and sequestration. And so actually you can produce the ammonia without producing the CO2. And products like ammonia and methanol, which are two of Trinidad's major products, are seen as being really important products to help the world decarbonize and deal with climate change threats. So actually, there's a good future for those.
Thank you. And that's when we're going to pause, at least for now, Mr. Driver. But thank you so much for coming in and just sharing, how we can benefit not just the economy, the energy sector, and also us here in TNT. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And that was President and CEO of the Energy Chamber of TNT, Mr. Dax Driver, just giving us some tips and some opportunities and some benefits, as we would have heard the waiver that we received, that we can now extract that natural gas from Venezuela. You're in the Now Morning Show. We're going to take a break and be right back. Stay with us.